You know, one of the things that I see young people here are people that are sufficiently young that they weren't around when Reagan was running for office, or maybe even when he was president, or they were very young then. And one of the things people forget about Reagan, but something which you really capture in your book, Craig, was that Reagan was fun. Reagan had a great sense of humor. Reagan, as a reporter back in those days, covering Reagan was enjoyable. And I always remember Reagan as a guy who always had the best jokes of anybody I've ever run across in politics. A lot of it was self-deprecating humor.
Yes.
You know, he'd make fun of his age, and of course, as we know, most politicians don't use self-deprecating humor because they never have a self-deprecating thought. One of my favorites, and I'm going to get Craig to tell you a couple of Reagan stories, but one of my favorites, because it's a brief story, was after Reagan had met at the White House with Bishop Tutu of South Africa, you know, who came to complain about the constructive engagement policy of the Reagan administration. And afterwards, President Reagan was asked how his meeting with Bishop Tutu went, and Reagan said, "Tutu, so-so."
In the 1980 debate, there are two famous lines that everybody remembers. One, of course, is that "there you go again." Mm-hmm. The other is in the closing summation where he asked the American people, "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?" But he had a very funny line also in that debate that people have forgotten about. He was asked by Howard K. Smith about something he'd said 30 years earlier, and Reagan said, "I was once a Democrat. I said a lot of foolish things in those days." A joke for which he got in trouble during the 1980 campaign, he told off the record to a group of reporters, and then it ended up on the record, for which he had to apologize, but time has passed now, so I can tell the joke. The joke goes like this, is that, how do you tell the Polish guy at a cockfight? He's the one who brings the duck. How you tell the Italian guy at the cockfight? He's the one who bets on the duck. How do you tell the mafias at the cockfight? The duck wins. He got in a lot of trouble, as a matter of fact, because of, obviously, the illusions of the joke. Ed Meese quipped to a reporter, "There goes Connecticut," because of the Catholic population. There's one other one is that in '79 he was asked why he was running for president, and wouldn't he settle for some lesser position, and Reagan said, "You know, if you're not the lead dog in the sled team, then your view of the world never changes."
Reagan was seen, and I think you referred to him as the sometime leader of the conservative movement back in the late 70s. And we have a large conservative movement right here at this hotel today that seems to be broader than we've seen it in a number of years. What's the comparison here? Is it stronger, weaker, the same as it was in the late 70s that helped lead to Reagan's election?
I think it's both. I think it's stronger and it's weaker. We obviously don't have the glue that held together the movement for many years was obviously anti-communism. With the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union, that glue melted away, dissipated. So the dynamics that have changed, although as conservatives we believe that any tyranny over the might of man, whether it's from the British royalty or from the Kremlin or from our own government, doesn't really matter. And so now what's holding the party together today is the grotesque, what I would consider, I'm taking off my historian hat, putting on my partisan hat, the grotesque concentration of power in Washington, but also ironically in corporate America, which is something we haven't seen before, where you have this, as the French would say, a pas deux, a delicate dance going on between Wall Street and Washington. And so there's a new enemy out there for conservatives to oppose. Reagan, Brett said that said he was sometimes leader, and that's true. He didn't always agree with conservatism. There was a very important issue out in California in 1978, which really set himself apart from some elements of the conservative movement. There was a proposition on the ballot called Proposition 6, which was offered by State Senator John Briggs. The proposition said this, that it would ban homosexuals from being public school teachers. And the Christian right now was starting to grow and flex its muscle. Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, other elements were behind this amendment. Reagan opposed the amendment, and it went down to defeat. And the day after the election, Briggs was asked why it lost, and it lost by a landslide. I think it was 57-43. And Briggs said, Ronald Reagan, 2 words, Ronald Reagan caused the defeat of the Proposition 6. The idea that Reagan was in many ways a libertarian in 1975 in a magazine, a Reason article in Reason magazine, he described himself as a libertarian conservative. In an interview later that year with Mike Wallace of CBS, he described himself as a libertarian conservative. He was deeply offended of any intrusion over people's lives by the government, which is why he was not always the leader of the conservative movement.